so many people are hungry and so many people are not happy, it will never happen. People are never happy. They always have problems. But people have always problems. They will never be happy. So it is only God's teachings to them. If they follow the teachings of their prophets, or if they follow their holy books like Quran Sharif or Bible, they will be satisfied. That just talking about hunger and all that will not fulfill anybody's Islamic. We have to do something for everybody.
I wish I had an answer for that question. My thoughts on that are that absolutely, as faith groups, we can be advocates and we should be advocates for social justice. The laws regarding women's suffrage, the civil rights movement laws, Civil Rights Act of 1964, that all came about through advocacy. So that is step one. Step two is a lot of these economic issues that we're talking about are really spiritual problems. And I think as we all work towards increasing the consciousness of humankind, hopefully some of these problems will be addressed. Actually today I was reading an article that was really quite interesting, showing how quickly now social consciousness can dramatically change in the matter of a few years. And it looked at things like women's suffrage and interracial marriage and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and how we are increasingly, as a society, taking a shorter amount of time to change that social consciousness. So I'm hoping that will help happen.
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know what the answer to that would be, other than if you start something, let us know, because I think we would all sign up in this room, right? But obviously, I think a good question to tag along to that is it reminds me of the first question. What can faith say? So many years after our faiths have started, have begun in a world that's so much different, yet in some ways is still oppressive, right? What can our faith say when we live in a world that in a country that some states think it's okay to fly like the Confederate flag? You know, I think those are good questions to have. And I think the other thing too, as I'm hearing about these movements, of course, that we know have been rooted and sustained within interfaith communities, such as the civil rights movement. But what is the tipping point for us in our faith, where sometimes faith can make these great changes, whereas at other times some very oppressive voices use the language of our faiths to continue oppressive things as well. So, but thank you for raising that.
It's a difficult question. One of the problems of being at the end of the panel is that everything's been said, but not everyone has said it. So, but I do think that there are many organizations that are engaged in advocacy. And there are many interfaith organizations here in Washington and internationally. And I think that they demand our support. As I said earlier, there are certain things we can do with our own hands, and there are other things that happen because of coalitions that are built, and people who support those organizations that really do argue and lobby for really systemic change. And those organizations exist, and we should be supporting it.
I don't know, I think fasting makes me an angry leftist, but so as communities of religion, we're obviously working against corporations, and some of the most aggressive corporations working in Washington, D.C. are the military contractors, and that's who we're up against for that. Locally, however, I mean, every single interfaith event I've been to here, our local politicians have all attended and have all paid attention eagerly, and I think they're more than willing to listen to what we have to say, and I'm sure they eagerly want all of us to participate in the working of society, and that's where we would have to begin, is we'd have to start locally and then fix all the problems on our streets and then expand beyond that. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much to all the panelists who are here today. If I can piggyback off at least two of the earlier questions, considering that today's society, communities and nations are a lot less monolithic compared to when most of the religious scriptures or the principles were either revealed or laid down. That said, considering that today's, at least in the US, roughly about 1/6 of the federal budget is spent on social programs, how do each of the 5 communities or religious groups represented here, how do they view these taxes satisfying at least some part of the requirement that's laid out in the respective scriptures, at least for those who try to follow the letter of the law? How would you view that, considering almost like 1/6 of it is spent in social programs? And for example, in Christianity, the tithing, it's about 10%. So would that exceed that limit? How do each of the groups view that?
Let's start with the rabbi and work this way.
I guilted you into that. That's not fair. There's a difference between individuals and institutions. From an institutional point of view, we can speak with more or less one voice. In the Reformed Jewish community in America, there is a religious action center in Washington, D.C., which speaks for the Reformed Jewish community and has very clear positions politically and lobbies Congress, lobbies other institutions, and works across the board with other faith communities to accomplish some of the changes we want to see. Yes, there are forces that are very powerful that oppose some of those changes. But building community, which is why we exist as churches, mosques, temples, houses of worship, we're able to, within those communities, increase our individual voice exponentially. And that's what we have to continue doing, because there are great forces who are opposed to those social change issues that we believe in. And that we may not believe in all of those things monolithically, but at the same time, there is a commitment that we stand for as faith communities that on many things we agree, and on many things we're committed and work together to see those changes happen.
And I would tag on to that as well. Just the fact that I think one of the things that